Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Person You Want to Be. I am your host, Eric Teplitz. Today, I have with me as my guest the human high five himself, David Hale Sylvester. David Hale Sylvester, or Big Dave, is a bodybuilder, trainer, cross-continental bicyclist, best-selling author, life coach, and motivational speaker. He is the author of 2 books, Traveling at the Speed of Life and One Hug at a Time, 99 Stories from the Man Who Embraced the World. Over the past 2 decades, Big Dave has traveled the planet and been on a mission to add some happiness and smiles to it. While doing so, he has given hugs to over 500,000 people. Dave is from Philadelphia. He is brash and he curses a lot. More than anything, though, he considers himself an expert in optimism. David Hale Sylvester, welcome to The Person You Want to Be.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And no one puts on their ambitions in high school to go hug the world or be an expert in optimism. No one said that.
Yeah, that's why I want to get the whole scoop from you and find out how this came to be. So just for clarification here, you're known as Big Dave by a lot of folks. How big are you exactly?
6'4", 260, 270.
Okay.
Played football in college and was always always bigger than most kids and stronger than most. And, so I was just always Big Dave, either Big Dave or the dude with the glasses, the light-skinned dude with the glasses. I mean, those are like probably the top 2 things I've been called my whole life, man. So it's just like, oh yeah, the big dude, big light-skinned dude with the glasses. Yeah, that's me.
All right. So the way I generally like to launch these interviews is by asking people to think back about their earliest memories, their earliest recollection, and specifically what I'm aiming at here is your earliest sense of who it was or what it was you wanted to be, what you were here to do. I'm talking like from the perspective of a child. And if you could also give us some context to frame it in by describing a little bit about your childhood environment.
Wow. Okay. This is a good question, and I'm glad. Well, maybe we should have done a pre-interview.
Whatever comes to mind.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind was I have a great family. My mother, my father, and my sister. I mean, it was just a good family. I mean, it was nothing. I mean, we had the normal stuff that every family does, but by and large, all I remember is just laughter and good times. I mean, that's it. And I wanted to be like my father. I wanted to be like my father, and I wanted to be like all the old dudes, so to speak. Now that I'm now older than all those old dudes. It's crazy, right?
I know.
I wanted to be like those old dudes. I wanted to be somebody that was respected. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought being a man really meant somehow I thought like you reached a certain age, and I don't know what age this was, but I felt like you reached a certain age and then you were handed a briefcase. There were a couple things you were handed. You were handed a briefcase and a watch and a tie. And, in that briefcase was the answers to everything. That watch was to keep you, in on time for things. And the tie is just what you wore to work. I thought that was the uniform of men. And that's it. And, in that briefcase was all this knowledge, random knowledge and stuff, And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be one of those guys. I wanted to be somebody that was, I didn't understand the word as a child, but I wanted to be somebody that was respected and trusted. And that's because that's what I saw in terms of my father. That's what I saw with his friends. And more importantly, I knew that, when there was somebody that my father and their friends didn't trust, I saw how they talked about him. And I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be one of those guys. I want to be somebody that's respected and trusted. So I mean, I guess that's probably my earliest. Yeah, those are like, yeah. I still don't know what age you get that watch and that briefcase
Yeah,
and
I'm
that
still
tie. Like,
waiting myself. I'm still waiting for that watch and for the briefcase and all the wisdom and all of that.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's funny. It's like I said. It's and I'm yeah. This is wow. What an opener question, because I naturally always carry a bag with me that always has all my crap in it. And I always wear a watch, and I don't wear a tie, but yeah, I definitely have the bag and the watch with me at all times.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So I did a little research on you, as I do for these interviews, and so I know a little bit about your dad, Samuel Sylvester. He received his MSW from Penn, University of Pennsylvania, in 1964, and then became a very respected professor of social work at Penn.
Yep, he was the man.
I'm interested to hear about how the values. I'm married to a social worker, as it turns out. So I'm interested to hear how your dad's values kind of laid a foundation for you, how he maybe brought the social worker in him into play in your environment growing up.
The social worker in him was present everywhere. I was just telling, I was on Father's Day, I was talking about my dad, and I was talking about how in seventh grade, my dad was teaching something. One of the books he was using for one of the courses was a book about the Attica prison riots. And so in seventh grade, my reading during the summer was to read this book that, I mean, was way above my pay grade. But read this book about the Attica prison riots and talk with him about what I thought they should do. Governor Rockefeller should do, and this and that and the other. And what's interesting is that as a kid, I skewed very conservative, in my thoughts and stuff like that. And so I agree with Governor Rockefeller. And I remember we were talking about Reagan one time, and I was like, "Oh, Reagan's a good guy." And I remember, I was boy, as a kid, I was a hardcore Republican, really conservative leaning dude. And my father would always scratch his head, like, "Who have I raised here?" So it's yeah, man, it's funny. It is funny. So my father was always, and my my mom was very much into politics. And so, we talked politics all the time, at the dinner table. That was our thing. My every day I had to read the newspaper. And I, a lot of times I had to read the paper to my mom as she cooked. And or if my dad was driving, I would read the sports page to him, but I had to read excuse me, to my parents. And then I had to be able to weigh in on whatever it is that I just read. I mean, reading wasn't enough. It was like, "Hey, so what do you think about that article?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." My mom would be like, "Look, you just read it." And I was like, "I don't know. I was just reading." And she's like, my mom would always be one that, only a fool just says words. You have to comprehend them. And so, it was, which meant I now had to read and comprehend everything that I read to my parents, and which, and I had to be able to weigh in on it. So, I was constantly talking about life issues with my parents, and I didn't realize how much this would mean to me until I was much older. But yeah, it meant the world to me. And so, constantly thinking about the problems of the world and what could be done to solve them, and what was their perspective. And my parents were very big on trying to understand how I thought, how I thought, because my parents, their feelings were that at a certain point I'm not going to be in their house or around them. So the only tether to me is to say, okay, I know David thinks this way. I know David thinks that way. And so they were very, very, that was their thing, to get
Wow.
inside my head and stay
Yeah.
there. And of course, I was, I was a goofy kid. I like being a smart ass. I thought I wanted to be a comedian when I was a kid. So I was always doing dumb jokes. So, it's, my mom would always say, oh, I know, my son would do the idiotic thing. And so she didn't like that. But I mean, that was sort of my reputation for a while. I would do the goofy thing. But yeah, my parents always wanted to know how I thought.
Yeah.
And they also wanted to know, what I do for, when I would weigh in on issues and stuff like that. Would I take the just or moral,
Mm.
um road? Would I decide to do the right thing, Dave, and whatever the situation was, that I weighed in, they wanted to make sure that I was thinking justly, and with the moral code. My mom would say all the time, she was like, I need to know what your code is. What's your code? What's your code? And one of the things that my mom said, was that, she said, your reputation is your identical twin that enters the room 45 minutes before you and stays 2 weeks after you're gone. And
Mm.
she's like, and what does your twin say? What does your twin say about you? And so it was, that was my mom's thing, just having a good reputation and operating with a moral code. So yeah, so my parents' values, um was constant. Them putting their values on me, was constant. And as a kid, of course, everything your parents do is that, that's controlling, is viewed as a pain in the ass or whatever. But thank God for it. Thank God for it. I mean, I am a different person. I'm less of a person, not just different. I'm less of a person without them.
Mm. Yeah. So just out of curiosity, also, as you know, I grew up in Philly. Was it the Bulletin or the Inquirer you were reading from as a kid? Do you remember?
So we had to read, most times we would go get the Bulletin. So because the Bulletin, remember, it was, they printed right at 30th Street Station pretty much. And we would go get papers right off the
Oh,
press.
wow.
And
Interesting.
that was the cool thing about going down to the Bulletin, and the Bulletin building. Um, you could smell the newsprint in the air, and I don't know. I thought it was cool to go into the Bulletin building, and you could hear the printers humming, like the building sort of shook. I don't know. I kind of dug that. I mean, I always thought, being a reporter was like a cool thing, a cool and noble thing. Woodward and Bernstein, writing the truth and stuff like that. I always thought it was cool. But it was, a lot of times it was the Bulletin. Um, not the Daily News. I could read any paper but the
Oh, the
Daily
Daily
News.
News. That's right.
Right. My
I was
mom,
a paper boy, and I believe it was the Daily News that I delivered.
yeah. My mom did not like the Daily News because the Daily News was the first paper to advertise porno theaters. And my mom was like the person running the excuse me, the must have a flawed code for taking movie money from porno theaters. So I couldn't read that paper as a kid. As an
Interesting.
adult, I loved it because it had the best sports. But yeah, it's that was my mom hated the Daily News. She's like, oh,
Right.
that paper's trash. Paper's
That's
trash.
funny.
It's not fit to wrap fish.
Yeah, that's funny. So what's cool is what you shared about your upbringing is that I'm reminded of that saying, seek first to understand, then be understood. And it sounds like your parents really were interested in understanding who it was they were dealing with, where you were coming from, what your code was, as your mom put it, what your orientation was, how you felt about things. And then, of course, they had their own values that they wanted to,
Oh,
try to
of course.
impart. Right. But I like that idea of seeking first to understand and assess, coming from a place of curiosity and wanting to understand rather than simply, and of course, as a parent, you're an authority figure, so you don't have to do that. But
Right.
it seems like that's something you've taken with you just from reading about your travels and going around the world and interacting with folks, is trying to come from a place of understanding and giving people the benefit of the doubt, and not just not just like project your own wishes or needs on them.
The thing that I try and do is just, look, I'm going to see you where you are. I'm not, I could make some judgments, or whatever. And sometimes I do later on. But for right now, while we're together, I'm just going to see you where you are. And that's it. I'm going to hear your version of the story, and then we'll figure it out, and we'll find an accord, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, one powerful story in your book, 99 Stories, One Hug at a Time. There was an encounter you had with a couple. I think I'm picturing it in a convenience store, and the guy was wearing a Confederate hat.
Yep.
So can
Yep.
you tell us about that? This is to me a perfect example of, uh, you know, uh, in a disarming way for the reader, of kind of, as you put it, meeting people where they're at. So what happened in that instance? Give us the.
Well, let me just say this, that, for 22 years, I've been traveling around the world trying to make the world better, hugging people and stuff like that, and just, finding an accord, with people and trying to create more smiles and stuff like that. And doing that, and that's it. I just want to find this accord, this place where two people can meet. Um, and in doing that, my agenda is to have that accord, have the smile, and then my job's done. I'm not here to get you to vote a certain way, act a certain way, eat a certain way. I'm not here to do that at all. What I hope is that you will be intrigued by my life, and my actions and stuff like that. And maybe you'll think just a little bit differently. And in my job, then I will really have done my job. But what happened at this point? I was in Arizona, and I was in a convenience store, and I was getting some stuff, and I asked the guy for a hug, and the guy looked at me and he almost sneered. He was like, I don't hug men,
Hmm.
and I use humor to deflect everything. Um, and I said, motherfucker, you ain't my first choice. Shit. you know, shit. I wish there were some pretty women up in here, to hug, man. And I think his girlfriend, who wasn't pretty, I think his girlfriend thought that maybe there was going to be, some tension or a fight or whatever. And she said, come on, because I told them what I was doing. And she said, just hug the man. He's trying to make the world a better place. And, it's every guy has been there at that point where it's like your girlfriend tells you to do something, you don't want to do it, but you want to get laid later on, and you don't want a fucking argument. So you're like, yeah, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. And I recognize that point. We've all been there. And so I just looked at him to sort of give him an out. I looked at him and I said, look, man, come on, man. We all hate somebody, right? And he started laughing and he said, we sure do. And I said, all right. So, he brought it in, we hugged. And when I hug people for just a couple seconds, 1, 2, 3, but because this guy had the Confederate flag hat on and maybe thinks a certain way. I don't know. But, just to make him feel a little bit uncomfortable for a second, I held him for a little bit longer than I normally would, just to make him feel it. And then I let him go. And then I smiled and I said, all right, man, y'all have a good day now. And I just got in my car and I left. And what's interesting is that a lot of people have taken me to task for hugging that guy. And, and I tell people, hey, listen, man, I think very highly of me. I mean, I really do. But, I am not the arbiter of who deserves and doesn't deserve a hug in this world. I'm just a guy. And and maybe because this person didn't get a hug, maybe that's why they think the way they do. And maybe, this hug is the difference. And so, so I'm going to hug everybody. And what they do with that hug is on them. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use that hug. I'm going to take the 500,000 hugs that I've gotten to leverage that to afford another 500,000. What they do with it, well, that's what they do with it, And, I don't think there's not too many lightning bolt moments where somebody changes their mind in one fell swoop. I think you change your mind because you have good interactions with people. And after a series of good interactions, you're like, okay, well, maybe my thought process is different. Maybe my thought process was flawed, and you think differently, and that's it. And that's what I'm trying to do. Like, make it easy. That's why, I hug my way out of speeding tickets and hug my way out of parking tickets and stuff like that. Because the next time a brother's pulled over, I want them thinking, oh, maybe this is another guy like Big Dave and I'm going to get a hug, not, I need to be on my guard and put my hand on my gun. And that's it. I'm trying to make it easier for the next person down the line, black, white, or otherwise.
Wow. So getting back to your formative years, I'm wondering, you mentioned being a football player in high school. When you were a teenager, did you have any growing sense of who it was or what it was you wanted to be?
Oh my God. As a teenager, at one point I thought I wanted to be a reporter, not like a reporter, but like a war correspondent or something. I had to, they always seemed cool with the vests, with all the film rolls and notepads and stuff like that. And then of course, every boy thinks about being a professional athlete or some sort. And then, no, I mean, the bottom line is no. I mean, I was a daydreaming kid, and I wanted to be everything, all the time. The one thing that I did always have was a strong sense of confidence, and that I always believed if I could get in the rooms with somebody, they'll give me the job. I always had a belief in me. I always had a belief that if I was in front of you, that I was undeniable. Like
where do you think that confidence came from?
I think, it's just taking chances as a kid. And I think, when you are a kid that is hanging around kids that are 10 years older than you, you're hanging around Kelvin and Kelvin and their friends, and I'm trying to, they're 10 years older than me, and that's a huge gap when you're a kid, you know? And so I'm constantly trying to project something bigger than life, to prove that I belong at the table, to belong at the cookout, to belong. And I think when you're constantly doing that, it is to sort of fit in. It's just you aren't realizing that, yeah, you're building up this other skill set that, this confidence to go and do whatever it is to get a laugh, to do whatever it is to get, you're willing to go to that end because I'm trying to hang with the big boys. So it's, I think, spending a lot of going on trips and stuff like that and spending a lot of time, doing what I do, I'm by myself. So a lot of times I think about, why am I the way I am? so it is, and I think that's what it comes down to. The youngest in my family, the youngest I was for a lot of times I was the youngest, and so I'm constantly working on, despite being the youngest, I'm allowed to fit in or I'm allowed to do whatever. So I mean, that's a big part of it.
So it sounds like you had some training, in a sense, of rising to the occasion to be included amongst those that were older than you, that you could become almost like a chameleon and fit in to any situation just through practice, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely, it's interesting you said chameleon because my old boss, one time somebody said, Dave, how old are you? And my boss just butted in and said, Dave is however old the conversation needs to be. He needs him to be. He said from 7 to 70. I've heard him talk comfortably with all types of people, and that's it. And I mean, it's just like, it's just, like I said, being older, I mean, being the youngest and hanging out with older kids, I needed to be able to read the room and yeah, I'll be whatever this room is so I can fit in. And I didn't realize that was like we're all every day, every one of us is honing a skill set. What that skill set is, you don't know. But I mean, you're just by being you are, whether you are alone or in a group, the youngest or oldest or whatever, you are honing a definitive skill set. And that, can only behoove you, can only, benefit you in life later on. It's just, the key is identifying that skill set and then putting yourself in that position, doing your best to put yourself in that position.
Yeah, being conscious about the skill set that you're building, maybe, or becoming conscious of it.
Becoming conscious, and I mean, I think it's yeah. I mean, doing some self-reflection. If you're not the funny one of the crowd, then by all means, don't try to be the funny one. And that's it. Maybe you're the deep person. Maybe you're the what's his face. Maybe you are, whatever. And there's always a way to get your stuff in there. But I mean, it's just it's to get your jokes or your insights. There's always a way to get your stuff in there. It's just let the game come to you, so to speak.
Do you think your physical size had anything to do with your confidence and maybe your ability to hang with older kids?
I not as much. I mean, from the outside in, people would probably say, yeah. I think the biggest thing that helped me able to hang was I never really I didn't mind being the butt of the joke. The butt of the joke is still in the room. And that's it. It's and I never took life personally, and that was something that Kevin and Kelvin would always tell me. So again, going back to the 10-year age difference, 10-year-olds' problems are going to be ridiculously easy for a 20-year-old man to figure out. And the same thing. I mean, just no matter what it is, 17 and 27, 18 and 28, whatever. It's easy for them. They've been there, done that. And so whenever I would have a complaint about life, whatever it was, they would always say, man, come on, man, don't take life personally. And they would, two things: calm the fuck down and don't take life too personally. And so those were the two things that were sort of just drilled in my head as a kid, being the youngest in my family. Calm down. It's not that big of a deal. My sister got the bigger piece of cake. Calm down. It's not that big of a deal. Whatever it was, it wasn't that big of a deal. And so I think understanding that, excuse me, not taking life personally, and just understanding, hey, listen, it just happens, it just helped me sort of roll with the punches of life. And so I never took stuff, if something happened to me, wasn't because I was big or black or loud or whatever. It just, all right, it was my time. It was my time for whatever this is to happen to. And I just, all right, let's move on to the next thing, and that's it.
So you mentioned Kevin and Kelvin, and for those listening, please explain who they were, how old you were roughly when you met them. You mentioned that they were 10 years older than you. How did this relationship come about?
So Kevin and Kelvin were the friends of a neighboring family, and they were, I've known them my whole life. They're really, my earliest memories are just Kevin, Kelvin, my family, Mr. Bowser, their father and the rest of their family. Like, it was just, our neighborhood was a very strong community. All the families knew each other. Everybody knew everybody. And it was, everybody played cards with each other. I mean, it was just, that was the time. And so Kevin and Kelvin, I always wanted brothers. I'm a big rough and tumble kid, and so I always wanted brothers. I always wanted to just hang out, and wrestle for no reason, and cuss and fuss for no reason. And so Kevin and Kelvin, as much as they were there, I attached myself to them. I put myself there. So, and the great thing about Kevin and Kelvin, was that, was I the butt of their jokes a lot of times and have to get teased and stuff like that or whatever? Okay, yeah. But you know what? They never made me feel, other than that basic teasing that we all did, they never made me feel bad about hanging around them. And, would just let me, hang around. Of course, when I'm younger, I had to be home by the time the lights got on, the street lights came on. So, whatever, it was just, so they never really made me, there was never a time where I felt like, man, these guys don't love me. These guys don't like me. And, what's interesting is that I didn't realize that Kevin and Kelvin were 10 years older than me. I can honestly say this, until Kevin's memorial service. At Kevin's memorial service after September 11th, and I was reading the eulogy card,
Hold on, let's back up just a second.
Sure.
So you lost Kevin in the attacks on September 11th. He worked at the World Trade Center.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about, well, first of all, tell me a little bit about Kevin, who he was personality-wise and character-wise, and then how did you hear the news of what happened to him on September 11th?
Kevin, the thing about Kevin had both Kevin and Kelvin had big hearts, and they had big hearts for me. Really, I cannot say enough about how good these dudes were and how lucky I was to have them. It's funny, through everything now, through today's lens, if a 10-year-old is hanging around a 20-year-old, or let me say a 20-year-old is letting a 10-year-old hang out with them, everybody would say, if that gets on social media, it's, oh my God, that's so cringy. Why would that happen? Everyone's going to automatically think that something's going wrong, that something bad is happening or whatever, that the 20-year-olds are taking advantage of the 10-year-old or something like that or whatever. Everyone thinks whatever. Like today, that friendship, that unique, very special friendship that I had couldn't exist today. In this social media world, it just wouldn't. People would have weighed in on their opinions, and everybody said, this is inappropriate or something like that. And I remember my mom would always say, well, why do you let him hang around? Because I was a goofy kid. Why do you let him hang around you? And Kevin and Kelvin would always say the same thing. He's funny. he's funny and he's real strong. And so, I mean, trust me, I paid for my brotherhood because, I had to help them move everything, whatever it was, moving furniture, moving stuff outside, whatever. It was just like, and I was so excited just to be, included with the older guys that I was like, yeah, man. So it was, it was just great. It was just a, beautiful friendship. And it wasn't like we're just moving furniture or moving whatever. I mean, we're talking about life and stuff like that. And so it is, it was a very, very, very special bond that I had with those guys. And Kevin and Kelvin, and, because I was intrigued by the twins, and I love conversations. I was intrigued on what was the difference in how they thought. Everybody was always interested in how I thought. I was intrigued by the difference. What were the differences between Kevin and Kelvin? And so it was, and Kevin was a very disciplined. He's just a disciplined brother. I mean, Kevin went vegan in 79. Kevin went vegan before the term vegan was really even coined. Like, dude, like that's who he was. Kevin was.
And what was that about for him? How did that come about?
He just started doing some reading, and he just wanted to live differently. And so, and he was in his early 20s, and just, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, wait, what do you mean you're done? Wait, what? And and he's wheatgrass and this, and he's going to a food co-op, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? And we're in Philadelphia, the land of the cheesesteak and the hoagie.
Oh my goodness, is that true?
Right. And I would always say, like, why are you eating this? And he would look at me and say, why are you eating that? And it was just like, and the great thing about Kevin was that he never made me. Most times now, if you meet somebody that is doing something different than the way you do it, the first thing you're like, ooh, why are you doing that? Or make you feel bad or stupid for doing what you're doing. Kevin didn't do that. And what Kevin would do is he would ask me questions, and he would say, I would say, what is that? And he would say, it's wheatgrass, or it's this, or it's whatever. And he would, because it was all natural, he would be able to name the 6 ingredients that were in it. And when it came to what I was eating, he was like, what are you eating? And I'm like, I don't know, cheese and steak. And he said, well, what's in the cheese? I don't know, cheese. And then he would say, and when I wouldn't, I didn't know the difference. I didn't know there was cheese and cheese food. I didn't know what processed cheese meant. I didn't know. And this is all before the internet and stuff like that. So when I would get to that point where I didn't know the information, Kevin would say, go look it up, which entailed me going to a library or whatever, right, or going to an encyclopedia or whatever. And, and the cool thing about Kevin, 2 things are cool about Kevin. One, he would wait until I looked it up, which took days or a week or whatever. And then we would
right.
we would have that conversation, right where we left off.
Huh.
Or if he felt I was taking too long, Kevin was the king of Xerox, because he would go Xerox some stuff and then drop it off in my mailbox. And, and he would just, and that was his thing. And so we could have that higher more intellectually, just that just
More informed conversation.
informed conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
that was Kevin. And so,
Boy,
Kevin,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
no. Kevin was just a special guy, and he was just in that regard, and where he'd wait. And then once we had that conversation, we'd have an even more higher conversation. And sometimes it changed my behavior. Sometimes it didn't, but I was at least informed and whatever. And that was a special part of who Kevin was. And Kevin was he was just a very thoughtful man. And that's not to say Kelvin wasn't. I mean, it was a different type of thoughtfulness. But I just knew that, whenever I talked to Kevin, I had to be ready, because Kevin was deep. He was a deep cat.
It's so reminiscent when you tell that story of you as a kid reading the newspaper to your parents, that they insisted and then they said, well, how do you feel about this? And giving your young mind, having your young mind realize, oh, these aren't just words. Like, I need to think about what this means. What's the meaning behind this, and how do I feel about it? And so similarly, when Kevin challenges you and says, what are you eating? And you respond, cheese and steak. And then he says, well, what's in that? And you realizing that there's more to the words than just the words, right? Like that there's a story and there's information in there, and it's kind of your job to weigh in on it, or at least and to maybe first understand it, just like in the same way that your parents challenged you with reading the newspaper articles to them.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, my parents, Kevin's parents, Kevin and Kelvin, it was just like, think. You have to think. You have to think, and that was it. At all times, you have to think, and so that was something that was very important. Like I said, not just to my parents, but, my family, but the whole community. I mean, we just had to think. And, the one thing that, Kevin's mother said, no one likes a lazy or dumb man, no one. And that was something that was just sort of drilled into us by all the women in the community. No one likes yeah. So.
And how would you compare Kevin and Kelvin personality wise? They were twins, and this is always a subject that's fascinating to me. How were they similar to each other? Obviously, physically they were, but how did you view each of them separately, and what was your separate rapport with each of them?
Kelvin was more chatty, and probably the funnier one. He was willing to, see my goofy humor. Kevin was the one that was maybe a party. I guess it was just didn't always get my goofy ass jokes, like, and stuff like that, because I'm a goofy guy.
So he was more serious, would you say?
He was definitely more serious. I mean, he could have his fun, but he would just, and there would be some times where, I would say some stuff, and I would look at him. I'm like, I know you want to laugh. I know you do. I know you're going to go around the corner. You're going to laugh, but I'm funny. And that was the difference. I mean, like I said, they were both smart, but they were both, like I said, it was just, Kelvin was more chatty. And then because Kevin commuted back and forth from Philadelphia up to New York, I didn't spend as much time with Kevin. So, whatever time I had with Kevin, it's funny, I haven't even thought about this. It wasn't about, I didn't care about jokes at that point because I really wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk to Kevin. So whatever Kevin wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about. You know, it's Kevin, like I said, he and Kelvin were my big brothers. And so I wanted to be in their world. And so it was important that for me to, you know, step my game up.
So what was Kevin's job at the World Trade Center?
He was a computer analyst at Marsh & McLennan.
Okay. And how did you hear the news? How did you, I mean, obviously you knew he worked at the World Trade Center. So when 9/11
happened. I knew he worked when 9/11 happened. Because Kevin commuted back and forth from Philadelphia to New York, I did not think of Kevin being in New York. You know, in my mind, Kevin's in Philadelphia, you know, and he's in Philadelphia and he's safe with me. And I started thinking of all the other people that actually lived in New York or North Jersey and stuff like that. And then my sister called me because my sister knew that sometimes I was training for a triathlon at the time, and I would go for long bike rides, and I would see Kevin sometimes because he had to be on the 7:00 train. I would see him as I was riding my bike on the way to the train station. And my sister called me and she said, "Hey, have you talked to Kevin?" And all of a sudden that clicked. So this is hours after after everything. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. And so, I knew 4 people in the towers. One person was on the lower floor and walked out. One person was in Japan on business. Kevin died, and one of my friends overslept. And that's the difference between life and death. And so as much as Kevin's death was the catalyst for everything, it is my friend who just hit the snooze bar and is alive. That really is the one that really keeps me going and keeps me. I think about that all the time because, the line between life and death is it's razor thin. And so it is, I think about that a lot. And so initially, because of, for those listening, cell phone technology wasn't where it is now. And so, there was no cell phone service for a while. And there was like the news no one knew what was going on for a while. And so people thought that Kevin was, we thought maybe he was one of the wounded or he had amnesia or whatever. You're clinging to hope that he is alive. And then slowly, we had to relinquish ourselves to the fact that he was gone. And that's it, right? That's it. And then all you have are those conversations. All you have are those moments. All you have is that time. In. That's all you have. And that's it. And that's it. And that's, and it is, and I miss him. And I miss him because so much of who I am is because of him. The last time I saw Kevin alive was the Friday before September 11th. That September 7th, I guess. It was a Friday. I was in a Whole Foods, much like I am right now. I was in a Whole Foods, and I had gotten. I was in the supermarket, and I'm walking around, and I hear a familiar voice say, "Oh, you got some wheatgrass juice, and you got a salad, you got a bottle of water, or whatever." Somebody, I heard Kevin's voice, saying every item that I had in my cart. And I was just like, oh shit, what's up? It's good to see him. And Kevin And we talked about, nothing for a minute, the same things everybody talks about. And then he said he needed some help getting back in shape because he just had 2 children. And he was just slacking. And
by this point, were you already a personal trainer?
Yes, I was a personal trainer at this point. And I said to Kevin, I said, come on, man, like what can I teach you? What can I help you with? I mean, everything I learned, I mean, you're the one that went vegan at 79. Like, what can I teach you? What can I show you? I mean, everything I am is because of you. And then Kevin said, he started talking about some places, some people I trained and some places I spoke and, stuff I didn't even know he knew about, and he said, nah, brother, you're beyond me now. I never wanted to be beyond Kevin and Kelvin. I just wanted to be like them. I wanted to be in their area. I wanted to be. And so to hear him casually say this, it was just beautiful. It's beautiful. But, whatever. Machismo, bravado, whatever, not want to sound like a bitch, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I didn't say anything. I didn't say thank you. I may have mumbled thanks. I didn't hug him the way that I wanted to. I didn't say, this is what you just said to me was a gift. I didn't say anything. And I thought I would have another chance. And so he was given a barbecue that Sunday. And, he said, stop by the house. And, I said, all right, man. And I didn't get a chance on Saturday. And Sunday, I got caught up watching football. And Monday, I went for a ride by his house, but thought I was too sweaty. And Tuesday, that was it. And Tuesday, my opportunity to say, like, 2 of the most powerful words out there, right? Thank you. Just thank you. Thank you. I did not get a chance to say it. And that's it. And it is, my chance is gone. And that's it. And so for anybody listening to this podcast, I would say, if somebody says something, does something, whatever, and you want to say thank you, just say thank you. Just say thank you then. Say the compliment then. Say the nicety then. Don't wait for a better time. Don't wait for a nicer way to put it. Don't wait, give them 2 compliments instead of 1 then, but say it then, because you don't know. You don't know. I am living proof that you may not get another chance again, and that's it. And so, I think a lot of times people say, oh, there's a phrase, living out loud. And living out loud, I think people always misconstrue and just talking about and airing their grievances and their bullshit in real time. Don't worry about that. Grievances pass and whatever. Air your love in real time. Air your admiration in real time. Live that out loud. Somebody has a slight, who the fuck cares? You forget that shit down the line. Who the fuck? It's be the butt of the joke. Who cares? As long as everyone's laughing, it doesn't matter. But if you want to live out loud and you want to be a certain way, you want to leave I'd rather be known for expressing my love and my admiration and my gratitude than anything else. That's what I would rather. That's what I'd be known for. And that's it. And so it's because this side of it, this side sucks. This side, when you should have done something. And what are we talking? We're talking 2 fucking words. Thank you. Two fucking words. This side sucks. So express the words that are in your heart, my friend.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that, Dave. And I would add to that that if you don't do it in the moment, because we're not always equipped, or for any number of reasons, we don't do it, right? If the person is still alive, it's not too late. You can years later contact someone and say to them, what you said to me way back when was very meaningful to me. It meant the world to me, and thank you. So I would just add that, if you feel like you missed the opportunity, but the person is still alive, then it's not too late. And I would also say that while I hear you with, it sucks to be on that side of things, as you put it, of not having taken that opportunity. Of course, how are you possibly to know, what was
Right.
to come? But I would say that the way you've lived your life since then is a thank you to him. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
You mentioned his memorial service, and that was your first kind of real sort of internalized sense you had of the fact that there was this 10-year age gap.
Right.
So how old were you at the time of his death? What do you remember about the memorial service? And how did you, in the midst of your grief, at what point did you come up with this idea to go for a long bike ride?
I was 30 something when, at the time of his death. His memorial service was packed, for lack of a better word. There was a certain celebrity around 9/11 death. So there were a lot of people, reporters, whatever. It was just a lot. It was a lot. And I almost did not get into the memorial service. And one of his friends, said, you belong in it. Take my spot. And so I went in, and, and that was, and it was surreal seeing all of these guys that I looked up to, yeah, just unable to even really stand. They were so deeply saddened by everything. And it was, and the thing that I was really taken with at his memorial service was how there were so many things that I thought were special to me, the willingness to carry on a conversation at the exact spot a week later, once you found out the information. Kevin dropping Xerox copies of information off in somebody's mailbox. Somebody told a story of, it was 3:00 in the morning. They heard somebody at their mailbox, and it was Kevin. He was on his way home from a party or whatever, and realized he was passing somebody's house and had some Xerox copies and stuff, and was throwing it in your mailbox. I was like, what the hell are you doing? So no, I've been sitting on this for a while. Like, I was like, wow, that's the same shit he would do for me. And it was just like, just how consistently good Kevin was. That was the thing. It was just I was like, God damn, he did that shit for me. So just how, which made me feel even more special, because I felt like I was a part of this. Yeah, it wasn't, I did this for everybody. I just felt that special, because I was a part of this
You were
wave of
blessed to
goodness.
have been in his world, right? Yeah.
And it was real. It was real. It wasn't an act. Like, this is really just who he was. And it was just like, it felt special. And so, I wanted to do something. The more people talked at his memorial service about the specialness of Kevin, and it wasn't just empty platitudes like, oh, he was a great guy, whatever, that stuff that you hear at a lot of funerals, where it's just like, oh, they're the greatest guy in the world. It was, there was a story behind it. The more that people talked, the more I was like, I want to do something significant for this guy. And it was always, I always wanted to ride my bicycle across the United States. That was something I always wanted to do. But, the question was, when was the right time? When was the right time? When was any other time that I had said I wanted to ride my bicycle across the United States, people were like, what are you going to do about work? What are you going to do? It's going to cost a lot of money. It's this and that and other. There were always a million and one questions. And, it's funny, the questions, no one ever says don't do it. They just ask a million questions, which you just interpret as don't do it. And and then I said, I think I'm going to ride my bicycle across the United States. And someone said, will that be cool? And then someone else said, can you do it? And I was like, and I remember I was like, oh, wait a minute. No one's saying no. Like, no one's asking the questions that are normal no's. Like, I was like, yeah, I can do this. And so what's interesting is that I forgot all about it, and then a couple months later, somebody said, man, I think it's cool that you're riding your bike across the United States. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, oh shit, I did say that. And so I got to work on it. And so I joined a bicycle tour to bike across the United States from Astoria, Oregon to New Hampshire. And then from New Hampshire to Philadelphia, I rode by myself. One friend came up with me and we bicycled the last, few hundred miles, whatever it was. And it was a life-changing thing, not because of the cycling. It was because of the people, the warmth of the country. For anybody that's older in your audience, that time right after September 11th, I mean, Americans were united. Americans were open. Americans it wasn't as much about, white, black, Republican, Democrat. It was just, hey, we're Americans, and it was a special time where people were kind of cool with each other, not perfect, but kind of cool. And it was open to ideas and stuff like that. And so it was, as I bicycled across the United States and was talking to people, I never had a problem at all with anybody. If anything, people wanted to talk to me more, to talk about Kelvin, talk about, they had never been to New York before. I remember a woman in Wyoming talking about, she wanted me to explain how big the towers were, because the biggest building she had ever seen in her life was 7 stories, which is the biggest building in the whole state of Wyoming.
Wow.
Yeah. And 2 levels of that is parking, so it's just, I found myself being this conduit to people's feelings about September 11th, people's expressions of grief, people's expressions of friendship. I just found myself being this emotional conduit for people. And so, and the closer I got to the end, people weren't saying things like, oh my God, I bet you'll be glad when you're done. People were saying, well, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And so, I mean, it was beautiful, because like I said, everyone's saying, yeah, what's next? What's next? And I was like, wait, what? And it was just like, and it was very, very cool, because it was almost as if the world was giving me permission to see more and be more. And it was a beautiful thing. And I think it's just, it was great. It was a great launching pad for me. It was just great. It was a great experience,
How did the hugging start?
The hugging came because as the trips went on, so after the United States, I bicycled to Africa, and then I bicycled to Asia, and then I bicycled North America again. And then I was going to bike Australia, and I wanted something. The problem was that, initially it was like, the first couple trips, it's a 9/11 thing. Great. Everyone was, but the further we got away from 9/11, people were like, well, wait, what are you doing? Then the questions started. Then the questions of what are you doing? How are you doing this? Well, how does this make sense? And whatever. That you can, if you get a lot of questions, you'll interpret that as like, don't do it, or you'll talk yourself out of something, And so, but I had already done a bunch of trips. So I was like, wait a minute, I have to repackage this, or, rebrand this so it makes sense for everybody, because I realized, all these people that I was meeting and stuff, I was doing something for. We're creating these happy moments. I'm creating smiles. I'm a part of something. So when I was going to Australia, I wanted to call the tour something, so that something tight, so everybody got it. And my friend suggested that I call it the Hugs and High Five tour. And I said, well, why would you call it that? And he said, because that's how every one of your stories ends. And I was like, and it's funny, you don't realize what you're putting out there. Because I looked at him and I said, they do? And I'll never forget, this is the greatest quote ever, because he said, motherfucker, do you listen to yourself? Every one of your stories ends in a hug or high five. And I was like, oh shit, they do. They do. And, I'm just a natural hugger. I'm a natural high fiver, and so, that was the first branded Hug and High Five tour. And then after I bicycled Australia, and I challenged myself to hug and high five 1,000 people in a month. No signage, no nothing, just me going up to people and sharing my story, and then asking people, after we hug, can I take your picture as proof, as photographic evidence of this? And once people saw that all I wanted to do was just to create smiles and stuff like that, a lot of times people said, well, let me go get some other people for you to hug. I think this is beautiful. And so, and this is just kind of grew organically. And then in 2017, I did a tour of the country where I challenged myself to see how many hugs and high fives I could do in one summer. So I drove the continental 48 states in 77 days, and I hugged 13,986 people.
Wow.
I had a little clicker with me. And then it was on from there. Once I was like, okay, now, and then once I started putting quantifiable numbers behind stuff, then people were like, wait a minute, this is really, really cool. And like I said, it just sort of just mushroomed from there. And and it's been something. And so now I go to areas affected by violence and mayhem afterwards to let people know, hey, listen, I get it. There a horrific act happened here. And you don't trust people, and you don't trust humanity, and you are feeling very down on humanity. Well, I'm here to show you, this is proof that you will smile again, that you will trust humanity again, that you will love again. And what act is more intimate between two strangers than a hug, especially at a time like this? So if you want to, we can start repairing this tear in the fabric of humanity right now. And we're not, but I'm here. And when I put my story out there in just very plain terms like that, and I'm not forcing on anybody, it's here if you want it, or if you just want to talk, I get it, and then people will just, give me a hug. And once they see what that's all it is. I'm not looking for your information. I'm not saying, click like or give me a follow or whatever. I mean, those things are nice, but I'm just like, whatever. But that's it. And it's and then people people are like, yo, this is really good. And then a lot of times, like I said, people will go get other people and for me to hug or talk to and stuff like that. And so what has happened is that I have, been like, uh, this rolling life coach, through the world. And now there's really not too many problems that I haven't encountered through people, and it's, I've talked to people that have been grappling with addictions, suicidal ideations, fatal diagnoses, whatever. I mean, I've talked with a lot of different, domestic violence victims, a lot of people, and it's just, and I've volunteered a lot of places. And so, when a lot of times when people are going through shit, they just want somebody, I think, either that has been through it before, or when they say what they're going through isn't going to be like, oh my God, and make a big deal about it. And so, I've seen a lot of shit now. So it's just like when people say, hey, this horrible thing happened to me. I'm like, okay.
You're not going to run away.
Let's
You
talk
can
about
handle, you can handle hearing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it. And that's it. And it's just and that is and that's kind of what I do now. And so a lot of times now, there was on one of my tours, a woman, she said, I've known about you for years. And she talked about suffering. She had a being abused by her ex-husband and stuff like that. And she said, I get a lot of comfort in your story. And she said, I just wanted to meet you to make sure you're real. Like, I can't believe that you're really real. And she said, I just want to just hug you and just say thank you. And that really made me feel good, and it's and I think that it's I think I provide a good service for the world. I think good.
Yeah, a couple of things that are, of note to me. So when you shared that your friend was the one who suggested that you brand your tour the Hug High5 tour for Australia, and you were like, why? And it is so funny that it often takes another person to mirror back ourselves to us so that we can even see who it is we are and what we're about. Because even though here you end, every story that you tell ends with a hug and a high five, it literally hadn't dawned on you. You hadn't seen it from the outside. It was so natural to you that, it wasn't anything of note, and it took someone else to shine a light on it and point it out to you. I think that's absolutely fascinating.
I think it's fascinating too. And I think it's the more, as I talk to people, I've talked to a lot of people about it. I think it's more, that happens more often than people think. I don't think a lot of times we don't realize what we're projecting until, like you said, until it's mirrored back upon us. And it's been very interesting. And it's just, I've been hugging people my whole life and stuff. And, and going out on these tours, the first one, I was hugging people all across the country. That's all I was doing, was just hugging people across the country. That was it.
Do you think you were doing that? Do you think you were doing that more for out of your own need and dealing with your grief? And how, I imagine this wasn't, the first ride was in 2002.
Yes. So
how raw were you with your own grief at that time?
I was pretty raw. It was, but what I found was that we all were raw. We all were raw, and it was, and it is, and people wanted to connect. People wanted to connect, and I one thing that happened, I think that really sort of opened my eyes to the world, to look beyond myself, was when I was biking up Grand Teton in Wyoming, I going into that trip, I wanted to be EFI, which is every friggin' inch. I wanted to bike every inch. I didn't want to get off my bike and walk up a mountain once. I wanted to bike every inch. And, I put a lot of pressure on myself to just, be in this great shape and whatever, and a bike every friggin' inch. And going up Grand Teton, it keeps switchbacking, switchbacking. And each switchback is just a little bit steeper and whatever. So it feels like we're going up like this. And for the last couple switchbacks, it was also it was unseasonably hot. And there are these big flies called deer flies, which, can sting you right through spandex. Wow. Those things are, they're used to, being on a horse's ass. So, my ass is looking juicy, so it's, between the deer flies, between the switchbacks, the heat and everything, my body just kind of blew up, and I had to get off my bike and walk up the last couple switchbacks. And I am a mess. I am thinking that I'm a failure and not achieving my goal. I think I'm failing Kevin. I'm thinking I'm all kinds of pieces of shit. And when I get up to the top of Grand Teton, like I said, I'm just crying. I'm angry. I'm just, like I said, I am a failure. And I threw my bike down, and I'm just sort of having a tantrum. And one of the tour guides was there, and he told me to shut up and turn around. And I was like, for what? And there's a sign, this big wooden sign that says, "Yonder there is Jackson Hole." And you see, from that lookout point, you see all of Jackson Hole laid out like a beautiful blanket. I cannot tell you how beautiful it is. And all of a sudden I looked at what I thought, like sort of where we started, back where we started. And I thought about, the mountain that I just came up. I thought that, what, no one's gonna know. No one's gonna ask me, did I bike every inch? They're just gonna ask me, did you see Jackson Hole? No one's going to care how I traversed the country as long as I do it. And it just made me, like I said, just step outside of myself and just really think, yeah, the important thing is just to get across. How you do it is how you do it, And if somebody says, oh, it's not real because you didn't bike every friggin' inch, okay, then you go do it. You go do it. That's it. I don't give a damn. This is my experience. And that was really me. That was, I think, the first pivotal step of me owning the experience and really also dealing with my own grief and like, hey, I'm not a failure. I'm not a failure, and and I'm a success for doing this and everything's going to be okay, and that's it. So, that was, and at Wyoming, you're about a third of the way across the country. And so at that point, my heart was much more open to things and the experience, and then definitely experiences of other people for the rest of the country, and stuff like that. But I had to get, that experience getting to Wyoming, biking from Oregon to Wyoming was really, I think I was all in my head at that point. Just way too much in my head,
And more in your heart after that? Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Boy, that is powerful. It's a powerful visual because I think I imagine everyone listening to this knows what it's like to be stuck in your head and also stuck by your own unhelpful thinking, right? And rigidity and and the more we can move our bodies, move through the stuckness, move through the stuck in our heads and open up to our hearts and open up to our purpose, to what really matters.
Yeah.
That's where Yeah, that's where the gold is.
Yeah, I think, they say don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, I think so many people sweat the small stuff, those details, and
Mhm.
it's just like, look, let's no, just work through it. Just work through it. It's calm down, calm down. I can hear, Kevin
Calm
and
down and
Kelvin.
don't take it personally, right? Boy,
Don't
that's
take it personally. Right, right, right. I mean, those are two very powerful things,
yeah, and
and
not
it's
not
just
easy, not necessarily easy, but
it's definitely not easy. It's definitely not easy. But like I said, when you're hearing from a young age, I was just conditioned to just, boom, that's right. Calm the fuck down. Don't take it personally.
so September 12th, I understand, is now officially National Hug and High Five Day.
Yes.
How did this come about?
Because the national day calendar. So there's a every morning we go and we look at Good Morning America or at the Day Show or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's National Big Goofy Motherfucker with Glasses Day, and you're like, oh shit, it's me. I'm here, and and I was like, how does that happen? And so I saw that there's the national day calendar, and I sent them something, sent them my story and whatever, and they contacted me. And then the next thing I know, I get an email back saying that, September 12th is going to be recognized as a day. And they wanted me to wanted my address to mail me my proclamation. And I said, no, you tell me your address because I'm coming there to hug everybody. And they said, so we're in Mandan, North Dakota. And I said, I don't give a fuck. I'll be there. And so I drove from Philly
Wow.
to Mandan, and it was a great trip because there was no agenda on this trip. I gave myself a week to get to North Dakota, and which meant I could stop wherever I wanted. I could drive whatever I wanted, And so I stopped at some places um, that I had biked through or hugged at and stuff like that to go just sometimes stand on the side of the road. Like one of the toughest days that I've ever had cycling was in Lusk, Wyoming. Um, and I just went and I pulled over to the highway and on the way to Lusk, and I just stood there and I had a moment and I cried and stuff like that. Or, I went to the geographic center, the two geographic centers of North America. Lebanon, Kansas is the geographic center of the continental U.S. I went and hugged some people there, and it's a very, very small one-room chapel at the center there. And then I went to Belfouche, South Dakota, which is the geographic center of the country, uh,
Oh, interesting.
given Alaska
Alaska
and
and
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Right. And I went there and I hugged some people there. And then I stopped by, I went to Kansas City. I had some barbecue. Like I just did this road trip throughout the country, throughout half the country, hugging and high fiving people. And it was just or not, and just having a good time. And then I ended up in Mandan, and it was great. It was great to get this proclamation, and it was just great, and it was and it's my day, but it's not my day. It's not, and I like it that way. Yeah, I want it to be a celebration. I want it to be a day where people just celebrate being together. Because in order to hug or high five, you have to be together. You have to connect. You have to see each other. You have to be in each other's spaces, and that's all that I'm about. And hopefully, through that hug and high five, you have a connection and you have some understanding, and that's all this is about.
Yeah. And the significance of it being September 12th, obviously, is the day that follows September 11th. And it's a good counter to this dark day in American history to counter it with a response of connecting and loving, connecting with people and expressions of love.
Yes, and it's and I chose that day because right, it's you know you don't I've seen people who are like, I don't need a hug. That's corny. That's that and other. All of a sudden, something bad happens to them. They're like, oh my god, I need a hug.
Hmm.
You appreciate a hug after something is bad. You appreciate a high five when you are at your lowest, and someone says, "Come on, man, get it. Let's go." And all of a sudden, you hear that pop. You can't help but
Hmm.
get up and
It's a
smile.
lift, right? It's an
It really
actual,
is,
it's a lift, and it's physical and it's spiritual at the
and it's
same time.
emotional. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. Very much
Big
so. And it's just and that's it. Yeah.
Big Dave, it is an honor and a pleasure to be able to have this conversation. I'm so glad that we connected. I look forward to an in-person big hug and high five from you. Who knows where and who knows when, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's keep in touch and let's do it.
And I want to know, before we wrap up, where do you go from here? This has been quite a journey for you, both geographically all over the globe and obviously emotionally. What's next for you, and how do you view the person that you wish to be from here on in?
Well, I guess the first things first, follow me on Instagram. I guess I need to overtly
Do
ask
the
that
plug,
from
yeah.
now on. Yeah, I gotta do the plug. Follow me on Instagram. I'm the Human High Five on Instagram. And that's probably where I post most regularly. What's next? I don't know. I'm working on a coffee table book called The Hug Effect, of my images from around the world. And those are the biggest things in terms of what's next. And what was the third part for the question?
Just who it is that you wish to be moving forward.
I wish to be an example. I think that I'm living my best life. It's I just saw this documentary about Bill Walton called The Luckiest Man in the World. And he kept saying it the whole time. He said, I'm the luckiest man in the world. I'm the luckiest man in the world. And I feel that way. I feel like, Bill Walton, you're stealing my line. But
Well, he stole it from Lou Gehrig, right? Pride of the Yankees.
Right. And I feel like I am living my best life, and I just hope to be an example for people that want to take the steps towards living their best life. And that's it. And I think that, just in this thing, I mean, it doesn't take much, right? It doesn't take much, just like my moment in Wyoming, you have to step outside yourself, get outside your own head, just like, what I learned from Kevin and Kelvin, don't take life personally, man. What we've learned throughout my whole story is just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. And also, what also is we've covered here is, I think, engage people to find out what you're reflecting, what you're projecting. I didn't know I was projecting hugs and high fives too much till almost 10 years into my story. I didn't realize that is what it was.
And then you could be more deliberate about it once.
Right. So talk to people and see what you're projecting, good or bad. It's a lot of people tell me I curse too much, so that shit doesn't stop me. It's just but
that's a quotable quote right there.
Right, but realize what you're projecting, so that you can really emphasize those good points, downgrade those bad points, and just really project and have an image, a more clarifying image down the line. And that's it. And I think that's kind of all what we've covered, right? In this talk, is just about, a blueprint, in one way of how to be who you want to become. because and so you might as well work on being a better person because like Buckaroo Banzai said, no matter where you go, there you are, right? It's just so if you're going to be you in your skin, in your being all the time, you might as well make it the best possible, the best being possible. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
that's
And,
it.
you know,
You got to live with it your whole life.
and life happens and tragedy happens. And when it does, we can certainly cry and we can certainly grieve. And that is a very human response. And another thing that we can do is we can allow ourselves to be transformed in a positive way by it, or we can use the experience, the painful experiences, to deepen our own compassion, to deepen our own whatever qualities we wish to um, derive from it that perhaps wouldn't have had a chance to flourish in quite the same way were it
Right.
not for those things. So it's not that we wish for those things, but when they happen to us, we do have some agency over the way in which we allow it to change us and transform us, and in what we choose to do in response to it.
Without question. And I mean, I think that for anybody that's listening to this, if you find yourself stuck, if you find yourself down and doubting, wondering, how do I take the next step? How do I take the first step?
Hmm.
Call me. My number is 267-252-1974. Only phone I got. I would show it to you, but I'm broadcasting from it right now. But it's the only phone I got. And if you find yourself stuck, then let's call me and let's talk about it.
Hmm.
Let's talk about it. And it is and there's no gimmick, there's no whatever. I mean, it really is my phone. There's no recording. Because I think, it was, and I give my phone number out a lot because it was the little conversations for me that I've had throughout this generation of hugging that have helped me move forward. And if I can have a conversation with somebody and help them move forward, then it's the universe is evening out, right?
Yeah, one of the most powerful things. So I read your book, One Hug at a Time, 99 Stories from the Man Who Embraced the World. And as I told you before we started this conversation, I really appreciated so many things about it. I love the variety of stories. I love that it's filled with humor. It's filled with sadness. It's filled with depth. It's filled with, just these, it's filled with moments, really. It's just a collection of moments. And maybe the chapter that had the profoundest effect on me was the one that is called A Moment Ago. So if just by way of concluding this conversation, can you give me the backstory behind A Moment Ago? And then I'm going to read at least a piece of it as well.
A moment ago was a chapter about I was asked to eulogize a woman that I only met a couple times. And, my friend's sister died, and my friend Michelle called me. And, I said, as soon as she called me, I was like, "You all right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She said, "But Dave, I got a crazy, I got a crazy request." I said, "Yeah, what is it?" She said, "My family wants you to read, give a talk at my sister's funeral." And like I said, I only met her sister just, for a quick moment here, a quick moment there, at barbecues and stuff like that. And I was like, "Me?" And she said, "Yeah, Dave, it's funny to me too, but they said, yeah, Dave will know what to do." And so I was honored, I was touched, I was honored, and and I was just and I didn't know what to say. I mean, what do you say about somebody that you really only met for moments? And so I was just the phrase moments, the word moments just gets stuck in my head. And so I wrote something about that, about how people can be moments, and how and the moments that we have, and the people that are, and then the phrase moments, moment of fresh air, please wait a moment. Just that, all the things that the times that moments come up, and just how they're beautiful. And moments are beautiful. And so I wrote this, and a lot of people really enjoyed it, and it's a part of my story. And so I wrote a moment ago, so you can go from there.
Yeah. So I'm just going to quote from it, because I think it, in a sense, it sums up your whole philosophy and the way that you live your life. You talk about how moments are beautiful, but also we can rise to a moment. We can make a decision to try to maximize a moment, try to even, you could say, improve a moment, or add beauty to a moment. And you write in this chapter that you don't have to see someone a lot to impact them. And that's the whole point of moments. We can have a moment together, as we are having today. And in a simple interaction, doesn't even have to be a long conversation, but in a simple interaction, something profound can happen, and a lasting impression can be made, and you can carry it with you the rest of your life. So here's what you wrote. I thought this was beautiful. You say here, more than just some well-defined piece of time, like a second or a minute or a beat, moments are unique unto themselves. Within them are these dynamically mighty morsels of time, space, opportunity, and perspective.
Man, that Dave Sylvester guy can write.
He can write. And then I'll just read this other passage here. So moments are tremendous, but extremely difficult to recognize in real time, because moments need the courageousness of one to act upon them right then, right there. Otherwise, their immense potential is dormant. So this harkens back to your plea to people to seize the moment when we have the presence of mind to do so, and to let people know how we feel about them, and to do what we can to make a moment beautiful.
And I would just say that if you look at the grand scheme of the earth, and you think about how long humans live, we are only here for a moment like that, not even. And so I would implore the people that are listening to this, please do something with your moment. Do something good and significant with your moment. And just thank you for having me.
Big Dave, thank you for this moment. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. All right, brother.